Despite attempts by the Hollywood to diversify the film industry, Asian American actors in Hollywood are underrepresented in the cinematic workplace as a result of stereotypical portrayals and fewer opportunities. A significant step in rectifying this issue is the proper inclusion and exposure of these issues in the education curriculum to adjust these biases so the industry will be more inclusive.
There has been a recent increase in the number of Asian Americans in Hollywood, but this alone is not enough to change the views on Asian Americans. America has been in many altercations with Asian countries recently, such as the trade war with China, which has caused many Americans to view any and all Asians as the enemy. Many Asian Americans have come to America looking for a better life and have little to no connection to what is going on in their native land. Similar to Asian families, the Puritans and Pilgrims, the ancestors of some Americans, immigrated to the U.S. hoping to lead a better life. If students were taught in school about Asian immigration, then they would understand that Asian Americans are not the enemy. But luckily, more teachers are teaching their students about Asian cultures, so the views on Asian Americans are going to change soon.
Most Asian Americans see clearly defined roles in jobs that they can partake in. Acting is not one of them. This can be directly related to the number of Asian American students at prominent film and cinematic arts schools. The author lists several studies of a lack of Asian graduates in film schools. In fact, while searching for a male lead for the movie Crazy Rich Asians, one of the movie's producers was told that they hadn't had a male Asian graduate in years by several prominent American theater schools. Many children often learn from watching movies, and they additionally learn from their parents, who generally stick to the status quo. As a result, they see themselves restricted and hidden inside a bubble to jobs such as a software engineer or an app developer. If the curriculum is made so that Asian students can be shown the successes of their own race in the movie industry, more and more will gradually enroll in these cinematic arts schools and earn more star roles in movies, thus increasing diversity of star actors.
Additionally, Hollywood fails to correctly portray the diversity of Asian Americans themselves, as well as applying various other negative stereotypes. For example, the culture of Chinese Americans is vastly different from those of Japanese Americans, yet Hollywood does not put effort into recognizing this difference, or better representing these separate communities. Thus, movies that have Asian American actors mostly showcase a generic Asian, an act of tokenism that furthers the stereotype that all Asian Americans are similar in looks, speech, and behavior. If one pays attention, they will usually realize that many movies portray Asians in a very flat, generic manner, implanting the seeds of prejudice into the minds of the audience. Does that make you slightly uncomfortable? As such, the subtle racism perpetuated by Hollywood can be alleviated through the inclusion of more Asian American actors in the curriculum, raising awareness of the fact that Asian Americans have unique and separate identities.
How would morals come into play when a group of actors are highly regarded in prominent films but are misrepresented? This is seen with Asian American actors as they have attained some highly acclaimed roles and set influence over the years in many prominent movies and series.
Asian Americans in Hollywood to continue to exist. Examples of this can be found in a variety of films, but the most prominent that comes to mind is Mr. Yuniyoshi from the film Breakfast at Tiffany's. In the movie, Mr. Yuniyoshi is played by Mike Rooney, who parodies the Japanese photographer by wearing a fake tan, taped black eyes, and prosthetic buck teeth that making a caricature out of Asian Americans. Not to mention the extremely racist portrayal of the character throughout the story itself as a merely comic relief and acting as a scapegoat to juxtapose Holly's independence and going against the social norms of being a free woman in society through the emasculation of the character of Mr. Yuniyoshi, which is especially important considering it sets a precedent of Asian males being portrayed in a feminine manner in politics and U.S. mass media for years to follow, as pointed out by Bo Langserswat of UC Berkeley. So how do we find a solution to solve this problem? A possible solution to this would be to simply increase the amount of authentic Asian American representation in authentic roles in the media, especially in Hollywood, in order to decrease the effects of prolonged stereotypes and status quo surrounding Asian Americans, especially in the film industry.
Adding a whole new dynamic to the movie/television production industry that is unfortunately overlooked due to the anti-Asian American sentiment. As a result of contemporary events such as the COVID-19 pandemic, film developers have portrayed Asian Americans less favorably, and through media, the pandemic added more fuel to the flame, as it ignited anti-Asian American sentiment among Hollywood actors and viewers. Asian Americans are treated as foreigners and are exoticized in a way that other actors aren't on screen. This marginalization continues to perpetuate discrimination, and awareness needs to be brought to this problem through education, and it creates a false sense of perception of Asian Americans, which affects how race can be seen in society.
In Lord of the Flies, Piggy is described as an overweight asthmatic boy who wears glasses. His characteristics don't match the average boy in the wilderness. He is a minority figure whose advice is undervalued and overlooked. Piggy is a symbol of underrepresented minorities who are often ignored in the social setting if not preyed upon.
Alec Baldwin claimed education is the key to rectifying the injustices in our country. Baldwin explained how educating the youth about African American history and culture can help students to craft their own views on different cultures, which will create a more accepting environment. The strategy can and most likely will be applied to Asian American communities, thanks to the influence of Asian Americans in Hollywood.
As Asian American actors continue to lose visibility in the theatrical industry, many brave characters among these actors have stepped up to let their voice reach to the people in the world so they can fight against this kind of injustice. Like the relationship of the light and dark, there has always been injustice present even among the most refined systems of justice. Such so, the struggle to fight for visibility for Asian American actors has become widespread. Though the injustice has clouded the visibility of Asian American actors, human societies yearn for justice and equality, such that the actors' attempts to prevail against this invisibility in Hollywood is inspiring other people to support their cause. To avoid these racial issues in Asian American actors, which are born through stereotypes and hatred, the coming generation has already been focused on learning these issues, spurring the growth of just and hatred-free thinking in them. And soon as possible, actions regarding these issues will be taken by the U.S. judicial system, reassuring hope of equality for Asian Americans.